everybody. Just one very brief thing before I dive right in. We have special guests in the back, Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Welcome to the Daily Press Briefing. I would be remiss not to take this opportunity to just talk about how much we love and adore your daughter, how she's the glue that keeps the Daily Press Briefing and the press team together. So thank you for lending her to us and to the Foreign Service. So with that, not sure where our friend is, but Simon, you want to kick us off?
Thanks. I just wanted to ask about the couple of different sanctions that were announced earlier today. Could you sort of say a bit about how exactly you think these sanctions are going to impact? It seems to be aimed at Iran-linked proxies. So what is the impact that you see those having, given that I guess we don't assume that these groups have assets in the United States. They're generally able to use intermediaries to route their transactions around. So what impact would we see from this?
Sure. So we announced too, any specific you would like me to start with? Or?
Well, I guess, there's more talking about the Iran-linked proxies.
Sure. So just to take a step back for those who might not be tracking, earlier today, the Treasury Department's OFAC designated one Iraqi airline and its CEO for supporting the IRGC Quds Force and Iran-aligned militia groups in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. We're taking this action now because the IRGC Quds Force and the network of group it supports, they pose a significant threat to the Mideast region. For example, KH has claimed credit for a series of drone and missile attacks against U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria since Hamas's horrific attack on Israel on October 7th. We are committed to exposing and taking actions against individuals and groups that abuse their local economies and engage in illegal activities and support terrorist groups destabilizing the regions. Specifically, though, Simon, you know that sanctions are just one of the many levers at our disposal when it comes to holding Iran and some of its proxies accountable for its activities.
Do you have any specific information that these groups that are being targeted do have assets that would be affected, or is it largely symbolic to say we're doing something?
I would not say that it's symbolic. As you know, all around the world, our sanctions have, our sanctions have legitimate intangible impacts. For example, the Iraqi airline Fly Baghdad has supported the operations of the IRGC Quds Force and Iran-aligned militia groups by delivering material and personnel through the region. Fly Baghdad flights have delivered shipments of weapons to Damascus International Airport in Syria for transfer to members of the IRGC Quds Force and Iran militia groups on the ground. So this is just an example of just some of the tangible things that are happening that we hope to be able to disrupt through some of our actions like this. Matt?
No, I was late, so I'll wait.
Okay.
Sorry.
Leon?
Well, the Turkish parliament is set up a vote tomorrow, I think, unless I'm mistaken. Yeah, I think it's tomorrow, on the Sweden tendency to NATO. Do you have a reaction to that?
I don't. We will, of course, let Turkey's legislative processes play out before getting ahead of that process. But if you recall, we have not parsed words about how ready we are for Sweden to formally join the alliance. We have long felt that it has met its commitment, and we look forward to this process moving forward. Alex.
Thanks, Leon. Back to the sanctions, now I have Russia-related questions. One of the networks that were sanctioned today, Shamlah network, is also operating in Turkey. Have you reached out to Turkish counterparts to ask them to follow suit?
We engage with partners regularly, including an important NATO ally like Turkey, but I'm just not going to get into the specifics of our communications and deliberations around our sanctions measures.
Thank you. And on Iran, given the fact that Iran's foreign minister has been active card-carrying member of the IRGC. Given today's sanctions and also last week's events, will he be allowed to come to the United States this week to attend the UN?
Alex, as you know, visa records are confidential, so I'm certainly not going to be able to speak to that. But I believe what you're referring to is a convening of the UN Security Council, and as you so note, the United States has a responsibility as the host country for the United Nations to allow and facilitate legitimate travel to the United Nations for legitimate business for ministers and members of government that may have business in front of the UN. So I'll just leave it at that.
Again, moving to Russia, if I may. Putin apparently today signed an order declaring a 1983 sale of Alaska to the United States as illegitimate, quote unquote. Do you have a response to that?
Let me just understand that he signed something today that said the sale of Alaska is illegitimate.
Right.
Well, I think I speak for all of us in the U.S. government to say that certainly he is not getting it back.
Speaking for Secretary Seward as well.
Saeed,
come back later.
I'll come back to you later. Saeed, go ahead.
The Palestinian issue.
Sure.
Are you aware of a Palestinian-American teen that was killed by the Israelis, 17-year-old Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar? And if you are you doing anything about that?
Thanks for your question, Saeed. So we are aware and we are devastated about the killing of 17-year-old U.S. citizen Tawfiq Abdel-Jabbar in the West Bank. We continue to engage closely with the government of Israel to ascertain as much information as possible, and we have called for an urgent investigation to determine the circumstance of his death and accountability be met as appropriate as well. We also have been clear for quite some time over the tragic escalation in violence in the West Bank and call on all parties to avoid escalations. I will also just note Chief of the Office of Palestinian Affairs, George Knoll, had the opportunity to visit with the family and offer condolences, and will plan to continue to stay in touch with them over the course of this process over this tragic loss. Our embassy in Jerusalem also has been in touch with the family and is providing all appropriate consular services.
But you don't know under which circumstances he was killed.
I'm not able to speak to the circumstances around his death at this time, but we have asked for the government of Israel for any and all relevant and pertinent information, and we have asked that they conduct an investigation into what transpired as well.
A couple of other things. It's the U.S. News and World Report is reporting that 16,000 children, women and children have been killed in Gaza. Does that you have anything to say about that? Does that really doesn't hold you back and doesn't stagger your perceptions of what's going on in this war?
Of course, Saeed. Of course. Don't take my word for it. Take the secretary's word for it, who has quite clearly spoken about the sheer impact on Palestinian civilians that this conflict has had, not to mention the impact that it has had on the most vulnerable in those circumstances, including women and children. I will say again that we believe Israel has a moral and strategic imperative to take all possible precautions to avoid civilian harm as it conducts this operation. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, Israel has been using dumb bombs, 2,000 pounds that were supplied by the United States of America. That is not exactly, being surgical and so on. As long as they use this kind of munitions, civilians will die. Day in and day out. Are you reconciled to the fact that 150 or more Palestinian civilians, men, women, and children die every day now?
On the specifics of the military operations, Zaid, I'm just not going to speak to those as this is not an American operation. But in every engagement that we have had with our Israeli counterparts and in every engagement we will continue to have, we have reiterated the moral and strategic imperative that steps need to be taken, more needs to be done to minimize the impact on civilians. But simultaneously, Saeed, it is also important to remember that while we have this conversation, no one is calling for Hamas to lay down its arms. No one has been condemning Hamas for the irresponsible tactic that no one aside from us has been for the irresponsible tactics that Hamas has been taking to co-locate itself within civilian infrastructure. Right. Its targeting of Israeli civilians on October 7th and beyond. Its continued attacks on Israel's sovereignty, and its stated intent of recreating October 7th over again and again and again and again. And of course, Said, I am not saying that there is any moral equivalency between Hamas and Israel, but we'll continue to reiterate again that steps need to be taken for civilian casualties to be minimized.
Although it's the Israeli forces that are really now occupying Hamas and occupying Gaza and inside the territory, correct?
That is.
So I mean, they could call this off too. I mean, they could probably pursue a much more a course that it might be much more successful, like negotiating with Hamas to release the hostage. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
I'm not going to speak to the specifics surrounding the military operation. Of course, we want to see hostages released as swiftly as possible, but we also believe that it is important that steps be taken to not just hold Hamas accountable, but degrade it in such a way that October 7th cannot be repeated.
My last question. Sure. Palestinians are reporting that the Israeli army executed 19 civilians, summary execution. I wonder if you're aware of the report and if you have any comment on that.
I've seen that article site, and we've not been able to independently confirm these reports.
But if you can confirm that this has happened, this would be a war crime, wouldn't it?
Said, I'm just not going to get ahead of hypotheticals. Okay. We've been clear that Israel must comply with international humanitarian law, but the article that you pointed out, we have not been able to independently confirm.
I understand, but if it did happen, that would constitute a war crime.
I'm just not going to offer a prescriptive opinion from up here. Matt, go ahead.
Last week, we were discussing the destruction of the university in Gaza. Matt said that the U.S. is always troubled by, or is troubled by, the degradation of civilian infrastructure in Gaza. He also said that you guys had asked Israel questions about this specific incident. I'm wondering if you've heard back from them, if the Israelis are saying that this building, which appeared to be empty and appeared to be occupied by, or at least had been occupied by the IDF, so that they could get the explosives in to do a controlled demolition, if the Israelis have come back to you and said that that's a threat, or it was a threat, and that's why it was destroyed.
I don't have any updates on that. It is correct. We have asked for some updates and operational information specifically on that, but I don't have any updates to read out for you. I'm happy to check if we've got more to share and circle back.
In your experience, does it generally take them longer than 4 or 5 days to get back to you?
I'm just not going to prescribe something to that one way or the other.
So right now you're no more or less concerned than you were last week.
We continue to be concerned when civilian infrastructure, civilian buildings like that are targeted. Again, this isn't our military operation to speak to. It's not one that we are conducting. But to echo Matt, we have sought out additional information and context, and I don't have an update for you at this time. But I'm happy to check.
Is it your opinion or your position, or is the administration's position, that this constituted a quote-unquote degradation of civilian infrastructure? I mean, whether it was justified or not, it is understanding that the Israelis haven't come back to you yet with the answers to your, no doubt, probing questions. this, you believe that rightly or wrongly, this was degradation. Degradation of civilians.
Matt, of course, it was a civilian facility. The circumstances around the operation, I just don't have additional context to offer.
Okay.
So I will
And
leave it
then
at
I
that.
just wanted to ask you about this word degradation, because this wasn't degradation. This was complete destruction. You still think that it's
I would not take issue with the way that you characterize it. When I was referring to degradation in Saeed's question, I was speaking about
I mean,
the
Matt was
degradation
one
of
who referred to
Hamas.
degradation. No, he referred to this, that you were troubled by incidents of the degradation of civilian infrastructure in Gaza.
Correct, which we are.
And this counts as degradation? It doesn't count as complete destruction?
Matt, we can quibble about the specific words for the entirety of the
words matter,
briefing,
so,
but
you know,
of
if
course,
that's
of course,
degradation,
of
then-
course, words matter. But the point that we have always made is that when civilian infrastructure and civilians broadly, steps need to be taken to ensure that those are not impacted. But I don't have specifics to offer on this.
This was a case of steps were, not only were steps not taken to protect civilian infrastructure, steps were taken to completely demolish civilian infrastructure. And if you look at pictures from other parts of Gaza, and I won't get into that because we're talking about this one specific case, this one specific instance, you know, it wasn't that the Israelis didn't take steps to avoid damage to this building. It was that they intentionally took steps to completely destroy it.
Again, Matt, I'm just not going to speak to the specifics of this operation. We have asked for additional information, and if we have any, I'll be sure to convey that.
Can I just very
Abby,
quick
go ahead.
on this point? They also, the Israeli army apparently stole 3,000 artifacts from the university's museum. You have any information on that?
I've not seen anything about that site, so I'm going to
Is that
refrain
something
from
that the
commenting.
United States would, ask the Israelis whether they did, and if they did, could they return them?
I just don't have anything for you on that site. I've not seen that reporting. Abby, go ahead.
Going back to the death of the Palestinian American teenager, on what level has the U.S. communicated with Israel regarding the urgent need for investigation? Has the secretary spoken with his?
We engage with the Israelis regularly at all levels. I don't have any calls from the secretary to read out. As I said, George Knoll, the chief of the Office of the Palestinian Affairs in Jerusalem, had the opportunity to visit the family, as well as the members from the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem have been in touch with the family. And we, of course, will continue to remain in touch with the government of Israel about this, as I said.
And I have a separate question. Do you have any update on the amount of Americans number of Americans who've been killed in Gaza and the number who've been injured?
Sure. So I don't have an update on the numbers that have been injured, but as a result of continued violence after October 7th, we can share that confirm the deaths of 23 American citizens, 21 who have served in the IDF, one who served in the Israeli National Police, as well as the recently reported death of Mr. Jabbar as well.
And in the course of Americans who have left Gaza and gone into Egypt, can you say how many of them you've seen be injured as a result of what's taking place in Gaza?
I don't have any metrics to offer on that.
Are you aware of any Americans who are on, or any Americans who are on the list trying to get across into Egypt who are injured and awaiting hospital treatment?
I would not be able to speak to such specificity about individual circumstances given privacy. What I can say is that since the conflict, we have been able to aid 1,400 American citizens, LPRs, and eligible family members be able to safely depart Gaza. And this is something we, of course, will continue to work around the clock towards. Camille.
Thanks, Vedant. Just going to what President Biden told reporters last week after his conversation with the Israeli Prime Minister, he said that there are a number of types of two-state solutions there's a number of countries that are members of the UN that don't have their own militaries. I'm just seeking clarification on whether this is the US like saying that it is willing to accept a Palestinian state that doesn't have sovereign control over its own military, de facto its own security and its own borders. Is that the case?
So look, Camila, in the conversation around our ongoing work for a two-state solution for the creation of a Palestinian state, the specifics around what that looks like is to be determined by the direct parties involved. It's not for the United States to be prescriptive at this time about what those conditions could look like. The president is absolutely right. There are a number of scenarios that exist out there, but again, right now what we're focused on is ensuring that steps are being taken to get us towards that conversation for when this conflict in Gaza ultimately ends. And regardless, we believe and we know that there is convergence with us and many in the Arab world that a two-state solution, specifically the creation of a Palestinian state, is key to regional security, regional prosperity in a long-term sense, something that we believe will help get us out of this constant cycle of violence.
And also just to follow on that,
Yeah.
the Israeli Prime Minister put out a statement this weekend after the president's comments saying, and this is translated from the Hebrew, "My insistence is what has prevented over the years the establishment of a Palestinian state that would have constituted an existential danger to Israel. As long as I am Prime Minister, I will continue to strongly insist on this." Would you agree that that sounds a lot like an Israeli leader who is not willing to work with anyone on the establishment of a Palestinian state?
I'm just not going to characterize the Prime Minister remarks, and we'll use this opportunity to echo what you've heard Matt and the Secretary say as well, which that there exists a historic opportunity for Israel to deal with the challenges it has faced since its founding, and an opportunity to take steps that we believe will ultimately lead to greater peace, greater stability, greater integration in the region, something that we believe can address the needs of the Palestinian people while also addressing the very legitimate security concerns that Israel has grappled with since its founding. Nick, go ahead.
Separate topic.
Yeah.
There are allegations Senator Menendez took bribes from Qatar. Over the weekend, separately, new reports the Qataris led a campaign to discredit Republican senators trying to designate the Muslim Brotherhood. Does state have any concerns about these allegations against the Qataris? Have they been relayed to the Qataris in any way?
I'm just not going to comment on this, as this involves an active Department of Justice matter.
Do these allegations in any way cause state to question the reliability of Qatar as an ally, considering they're playing such a key role in the hostage crisis in Israel?
I don't have anything to offer on the circumstance surrounding Senator Menendez, but to take a step back, Qatar is an important partner, a key regional partner, one that is playing an immeasurable role in the ongoing work to not just address the ongoing conflict between Israel and Gaza and Hamas, but also the work that's ongoing towards hostage release. And so don't have anything else to offer on that. Go ahead.
U.S. government is sending every day $8 million.
I'm sorry, you're going to need to speak up. I'm having a hard time
U.S.
speaking.
government is sending every day $8 million to Afghanistan. Meanwhile, based on the recent report by the UN mission in Afghanistan, Taliban have detained women in Afghanistan based on their ethnicity, mostly Hazara and Tajik women. Doesn't this money help to Taliban to imposing harder restriction on the Afghan women?
Let me say a couple things. First and foremost, as it relates to Afghanistan and the Taliban, its treatment of women and girls, it's the lack of human rights, basic human rights in everyday society, continues to be something of great concern to us, and something that we have continued to make clear to the Taliban is unacceptable to us as it goes about its own desired journey for legitimacy. Separately, though, there are a number of steps and measures that are in place to ensure that U.S. humanitarian aid does not end up in the hands of the Taliban. We work closely with trusted NGOs and other entities who we've had long-established relationships with, and there are measures and vetting and other processes in place to ensure that the hard-earned money from the American taxpayer does not end up in the hands of the Taliban. Go ahead.
Thank
right
you
behind
so
her.
much, Vedant.
Yeah.
After the last general election in Bangladesh, in the State Department press statement, it is outlined that U.S. is looking ahead to partnering with Bangladesh to advance shared vision, also a free and open Indo-Pacific region. What specific action is the U.S. considering to deepen its partnership with Bangladesh?
There are a number of steps that we have and will continue to take when it comes to deepening our partnership with Bangladesh. You've heard me say it here before that last year was the anniversary of our diplomatic relations with Bangladesh, and there continue to be a number of areas, specifically in addressing climate cooperation, security cooperation, where we believe that there is opportunity. Of course, through that, we have the opportunity to also engage with non-government actors as well, which we believe is also key and critical to deepening this relationship also.
Thank you.
DR, go ahead.
Thank you, Ben. I'm
Yeah.
going back to the new sanctions on flyback.
Yeah.
In terms of time, when did the Iran use that airline to send weapons, fighters, and...
I'm just not going to speak more specifically about some of these efforts from up here, given operations.
The U.S. ambassador to Iraq says that the Iran use of the Iraqi airline for weapons, fighters, and the U.S. dollar smuggling. So I'm talking about the U.S. dollars. You know that the dollars in the Iraq is coming from New York, and then the United States puts a lot of sanctions on the Iraqi banks. So how did these Iranians get these dollars from the Iraqi government? What have you discussed with them?
So, in terms of the specific ins and outs of the transactions and the financial history, I have no doubt our colleagues at the Treasury Department and OFAC may be able to speak to you a little bit more in detail about the sanctions and background here.
One last question. A National Defense Authorizations Act, which signed by President Biden late December, requests this administration to provide the Kurdistan region of Iraq a defense system. And last week there were meetings between the Kurdistan region government and the U.S. officials, and you showed your support to the Kurdistan region in terms of security and diplomacy. So does that administration provide the anti-missile defense to Iraqi Kurdistan? Are you open to discuss that with your partners in Kurdistan region?
I will just note, DR, that the Secretary Blinken had the opportunity to chat briefly with the Prime Minister of the Kurdistan region in Switzerland last week. Continued cooperation in the security space was certainly a topic of discussion, but I just don't have anything to announce, and I don't have anything more specific to get into right now.
And last question. So what do you have for the Iranian media outlets? They are trying to mislead and distorting the very facts of information about their attacks on Erbil and on the region. They're using fake images, fake videos, just to tell the public that they are doing this and they are pretexting for their acts in the region. Then what do you have for that?
We have not parsed our words about some of these kinds of misleading tactics that the Iranian regime and some of its proxies have undertaken. But again, we believe quite strongly that the sovereignty of countries, Iraq in this situation, needs to be respected, and the protection of civilians, the protection of U.S. personnel is tantamount, and we will take appropriate steps to hold these malign actors accountable should we need to.
Thanks.
Rabia, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. I'll go back on the two-state solution. The EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, today said that Israel's plan to destroy Hamas is not working, and the European Union must pursue efforts to create a two-state solution despite Israeli opposition. And there were also some reports that the EU is seeking to impose consequences on Israel for its opposition to Palestinian statehood. What is your response to that? Do you believe that there should be consequences on Israel's opposition to a state solution?
So as it relates to the meetings and talks on this that are ongoing in the European Union, I would refer you to member states and staff from those member states to speak at greater specificity about this. We're obviously have not been party to those conversations. But to take a step back, we believe that it is in the best interest, not only for the Israeli people, but also the Palestinian people, as well as for the region. We think that a two-state solution, a creation of a Palestinian state, is the only path that gets us out of this endless cycle of violence and onto a path that provides peace and security for all. We will continue to work towards that goal, of course, in close coordination with our EU partners and other partners in the region.
Do you have anything to share on your, engagements with Israelis in this regard, on the two-state solution?
We have been urging the creation of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution at every engagement that we've had with Israeli officials, as well as Palestinian officials, even prior to October 7th, and this is something that we'll continue to do, because we truly believe it is something that can offer long-standing, enduring peace and stability for the region, and something that, again, will get us out of this endless cycle for violence. Go ahead.
Thank you. The Russian embassy said that it sent a note to the State Department with a request to strengthen security measures around its diplomatic missions and consulates amid a surge of provocative actions. Did you receive it? Did you respond to it?
I wouldn't speak to internal diplomatic deliberations publicly, but I will just say that we take our responsibilities of foreign missions that we host in our country quite seriously, including the safety and security of relevant diplomats from foreign nations who may work and operate outside of the United States.
One more. As you probably know, Gonzalo Lira died in a Ukrainian prison. Do you intend to investigate this case? And on a side note, Putin didn't cite any orders claiming that the sale of Alaska was illegitimate. Just to clarify.
Maybe you and Alex can talk about it after class. Hash this out. I'm not aware of that case. I really would refer to Ukrainian authorities to speak to that. Ksenia, go ahead.
Thank you. President of Serbia, Alexander Vučić, said today that he spoke to Assistant Secretary of State James O'Brien concerning Kosovo Central Bank decision to eliminate the Serbian dinar in Kosovo. What steps, if any, is the United States going to take to prevent the Kosovo Central Bank from suspending the Serbian dinar on February 1st?
Ksenia, I'm going to have to check back on that. Let me check with the team and I'll get back to you. All right, go ahead in the back. Yeah, you.
Hello. The first question regarding to the Qatar, we have been reading and listening comments from Israeli leaders that Qatars are involved with Qatar's leaders, and Qatar as a state is involved with Hamas, allies with Hamas, and they must be punished. How much U.S. agree or disagree that is Qatar involved with Hamas, not just in October 7th, but in the all the process of Hamas operations? This is the first question. Second question, why the USA disagree with this international court trail? If you are assured that Israelis are very innocent, they are very moral, they don't do something wrong over 100 days, they are amazing, they don't do anything wrong. So why you are afraid that you go to this trail if you are assured that they are innocent? Can you justify or explain why you are worried or afraid that Israel subject to the trail? The last question is related to the Houthi. do we expect that USA could escalate like their operation against the Houthi until like invading Yemen, or like do like an escalation in terms of bombing Yemen, or like they are just going to do some small operation, even the Houthi like doesn't care about what are you doing?
Let me work backwards. Thank you. I heard you. Let me work backwards. First, as it relates to the Houthis, the United States is not interested in any escalation, but it is never acceptable for malign actors to target international vessels, to target legitimate commerce that is flowing through the Red Sea. We're talking about international waters that allow 30% of global container shipping to flow through those waters, 15% of seaborne trade. This is a waterway that is vital, and we will always take appropriate steps to hold those accountable that put things like legitimate commerce, civilians, U.S. personnel in harm's way.
But no invasion.
No. Number two, let's to your question on the ICJ. I think you are taking our comments a little bit out of context. What we have been clear about is that the accusation that Israel is committing genocide, we believe that accusation is unfounded. That being said, we have not hesitated to make clear, and I did so at the beginning of this press briefing, which I will add you were a little late to, that Israel has a moral and strategic imperative to take additional steps to ensure that impacts on civilians are minimized.
But if they did,
we have been very clear that more steps need to be taken, and that the toll on Palestinian civilians and the lives that have already been lost are far too many. And then what was your first question?
First question related to the Qatar, like I wish
yes,
you can
yes.
make
So
it clear,
on
like because Ben Gvir and he's
I will just say that as it relates to Qatar, they are a key regional partner and an important relationship that the United States has in the region, and they have been an important conduit to a lot of the work that we are doing as it relates to the conflict in Gaza, as well as other regional priorities as well. Go ahead.
So, new Polish Prime Minister Tusk is in Kiev today, and he pledged further assistance in the form of financing to purchase weapons, and announced a reset of relations. Do you have a reaction to that, given the halt of U.S. assistance and the European sides? At least there's no sign of stopping that. And also, while in Kiev, Tusk also suggested that Hungary's prime minister is quietly supporting Russia, and said that he's betraying the West. I wonder if you agree with that statement.
On the second one, I don't have anything to offer on that. Hungary is a important NATO ally. As it relates to the first part of your question, we of course welcome our Polish allies taking steps, and really any country taking whatever steps that is feasible within their systems to continue to support our Ukrainian partners. As it relates to the United States, you heard the Secretary talk about this last week. It is so imperative that Congress act as swiftly as possible so that we can continue to advance our own national security interests by supporting our Ukrainian partners. And to echo Secretary Blinken, there is no secret pot of money here. We need to work with Congress to get this done. But the point that you raised about Poland is an important one, because not only, of course, has the United States taken intense steps over the past 2 years to support our Ukrainian partners, but other countries, a part of the alliance, even outside of the alliance, have taken appropriate steps to do so as well, and we welcome any country that's able to do it. Alex, go ahead.
Two separate topics. Can you please fill us in on the administration's current policy on confiscation of Russian state assets? Any progress on that front?
This is something that we are just continuing to work towards with our G7 and other like-minded partners. There's, of course, Alex, a lot of complexity when you look at through the varying different government systems and international laws that exist, and so we're continuing to have those conversations. We have no doubt, though, that this could be an important conduit to continue to hold the Russian Federation accountable, but I don't have anything to announce for you today.
Thank you. A second topic on the South Caucasus.
Yeah.
The Secretary in December invited Azeri-Armenian foreign ministers to Washington to discuss Karabakh conflict. Is the invitation still pending? Was it rejected?
I don't have any scheduling updates to offer, Alex, but we look forward to talking more about this soon.
Russian Lavrov said that President Aliyev is willing to go to Moscow to discuss Karabakh conflict. Do you feel the same appetite to Washington?
You know that we have the same appetite, Alex. As someone who has covered this and worked and asked questions about this for at least as long as I've been here, you know firsthand that this is something that the United States and that the Secretary is interested in, and that this is something that we're going to work very hard to get across the finish line in close coordination with Armenia and Azerbaijan and the others who are working on this issue, including Coordinator Bono in the back.
Thank you. United States daily expresses its regret for the killing of the civilian in Gaza, and they still killed now more than 24 and killed civilians, and there's under the rubber. At the same time, United States refused the ceasefire in Gaza. And also the only state who used last time vetoes to ceasefire. You don't think this is a conflict of the position?
It's not, because a ceasefire is not a policy that we're pursuing, because we believe that important steps need to be taken to degrade Hamas so that it cannot carry out the October 7th attacks over and over and over again. That's not hyperbole. That's not me up here exaggerating. That's the stated intent of Hamas. They want to conduct October 7th every day if they had the opportunity to. And so currently Israel is conducting an operation to take steps to degrade Hamas so that it cannot do that. And we believe that that is something that they must and should do. Simultaneously, we believe that there is a moral and strategic imperative to to take steps so that civilians are not impacted at the rate that they have been. But while we have this conversation, let's not forget that over the course of this, it is Hamas that has been co-locating itself with civilian infrastructure. It is Hamas that has been using facilities like schools and hospitals and apartment buildings as headquarters, co-locating itself within civilians. So we shouldn't lose sight of that also. One other, go ahead. No, behind you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me go back to the Treasury sanctions on Iranian-backed militias. How much do you believe the sanctions on Iranian-backed figures and militia groups are impacting their abilities? Because they say we don't have any assets in the United States, and Iran and its backed militias use different tactics to evade sanctions.
Well, the important thing to remember here also is that sanctions are not the only steps that we have at our disposal, but we also believe that our sanctions are a vital tool against those who try to misuse not only their own economic systems, but also try to subvert the U.S. Financial systems as well. I already offered an example of how Fly Baghdad had been working closely with the IRGC already. Okay, all right, thanks everybody.
I just want to last and possibly least, I noticed that it is now past halftime at the football match in Ivory Coast that the Secretary is going to, and Equatorial Guinea is beating the hosts 1-0. Who is the Secretary rooting for in this?
The Secretary is looking forward to just catching a great game and seeing the sport of soccer or football played.
Either rooting or wagering.
He is very glad to be hosted, to be catching this match. As you know, Matt, he's a big soccer fan, and I know he is enjoying what seems to be turning out to be a great game. And while I have the floor, my condolences on on the bills
Yeah,
yesterday.
I'm still recovering.
So you and Undersecretary Allen can commiserate together. All right, thanks everyone.